Okay, so it sounds then you feel that we need a renaissance of Indian scholars who
Yes.
are not feeling the need to distance themselves from the roots and the psychological and historical roots of these traditions. So here we're coming to kind of an interesting conundrum in Indic studies, which I know that we've spoken about a lot at the Center for Indic Studies, and that is, how does this Indic voice get created, especially considering the huge diversity within the Indic traditions and the lack of, say, a chain of succession like the Nicene
Central
Creed
authority.
and things like this.
No central authority.
It's not a monolithic
So
block, so
obviously
how does that get created?
I churned that issue very widely in my own mind. Who is the Indian voice and what is the Indian point of view?
Right, and who is the arbiter of this Indic identity that's being created?
And when there's so many views. So the way I answered it is not the normal way. The normal way is you get all the Indian schools together and try to build some harmony, and that hasn't worked. So I never tried that.
Okay.
People criticize me for, why didn't you go and have a council of all the dharmas? I said, because it didn't work for thousands of years, I'm not going to try that. You can please try that. My method is a very different method. My method is that if I want to figure out what's common among the dharma traditions, I will ignore that question. I will instead ask, how are we different from others? And maybe the way we are different from others is common amongst us.
Okay, so you would establish commonalities by distinguishing ourselves.
That is called the Purva Paksha method, which means I study the other. So by studying the other, I found that the core DNA of Christianity is the Nicene Creed. And I found that the Nicene Creed is incompatible with karma and reincarnation.
Okay.
So then I found that all the Indian traditions share karma and reincarnation. So where we are common is how we are different from someone else.
Okay, and then there we have a tenet of the Indic voice established.
So that's one point. So like that, I've discovered 4 different major areas of commonality within the Indic traditions and difference with respect to the West.
Okay.
And those are 4 major chapters.
Could you briefly detail those 4?
Well, one is the Western is history-centric. In other words, the prophetic history is very important. And in all the Indian traditions, you can raise your level of consciousness through various traditions, various techniques, which people may disagree with them, but they all claim there are some techniques. And these are ahistorical. So the recovery of the highest level of consciousness available to each and every person, what we call Satchitanand, that is very different from the history-centrism of the
Okay,
West.
so this is then an experiential or a phenomenological
what I
approach,
call embodied knowing.
Embodied knowing.
Embodied knowing, that's the term.
As
opposed
juxtaposed to historical.
history-centrism.
History-centrism.
Second one is integral unity versus synthetic unity. So the unifying things in the Indian tradition is very, very strong. And that's why, and that's to be contrasted with, say, the synthetic nature of reality, the synthetic nature of knowledge, the synthetic nature of the individual in the Western thought. So even Westerners, the model of the body is a synthetic unity of parts, whereas the holistic idea is very different, it's integral unity.
Okay.
And while the Indian approach to dance is integrally unified with philosophy and music is integrally unified with philosophy, Western dance, Western philosophy got nothing to do with each other. Sanskrit contains the unity of all philosophy in it, all the philosophy, and all the performing arts also in it. So you'll find that the equivalent of humanities in the Indian system are integrally unified and not just interdisciplinary and put together in that way. So that's the second one. The third one is the attitude towards chaos. How Indians handle chaos, or what the Westerners call chaos, is very different than what Westerners how they handle chaos. And that's probably one of the most exciting chapters in this book, and that's chapter 4. Comfort with chaos, comfort with uncertainty, ambiguity, doubt. I was interviewed by ABC News for their Sunday program at the Kumbh Mela, and the guy asked me the question, how do I go and explain to the Americans all this chaos? So I said, well, the chaos in your mind, because it's cognitive overload that you are facing. There is so much complexity beyond your models. Your models cannot fit all this complexity. So because your model crashes, you're calling it chaos. But if you go around asking the various individuals, they are all doing their thing. They don't think there's any chaos. They're pretty happy going about doing what they're doing. You watching them are finding chaos. He found it so interesting that what was supposed to be a 5-minute interview went on for 3 hours. So a large part of their documentary was on my discussion, because I reversed the gaze and put the cause of this chaos feeling not on the object that they're looking at, but on the subject who is doing this looking. And I find this comfort with multiplicity, many threads going on, multitasking. In an Indian meeting, A is talking to B, C is talking to D, E is listening to A and talking to F. And the Westerners sitting there are very confused about what's all this going on, what is happening. So in my business world, I found that when I would have these kind of meetings, and the meeting's over, the Westerners would come to, the Indians had all filtered out because they can do many things and filter out what's relevant and make it cut, paste, figure it out. And the Westerner would come to me and ask, what happened? I'm confused. What's going on? What did we decide? Because this guy said this and then this guy said that. So there is a certain discomfort with what they would consider chaos. They want things to be linear. They want things to be simple. So that's the third one. And the fourth one is the non-translatability of Sanskrit words.
Okay.
That there's a reason for it, because mantra is vibrational and you cannot translate it. You cannot replace one mantra with another, because each vibration has a distinct effect. Like each chemical would have a different effect. You cannot just
the sound and the substance of the mantra
Yes.
is just as important as the meaning.
As the meaning. And so I've given examples of 20 or 25 non-translatables in this book in chapter 5. And I intend to take that out and make a whole volume out of that. So these are some building blocks and solid pillars of what is different and non-digestible into the West. The only way to assimilate this is to distort it and make it digestible. And I'm trying to resist the digestion by keeping that